Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to learn the chapter The Rattrap from the book Flamingo. Before we start, I have a question for you all. Tell me, what is the limit to our greed? And I am very much sure that nobody can provide with an appropriate answer because there is no limit to our greed. We earn something and we want something else. Our list is never ending. This is how the world has trapped us. Let us discuss the title The Rat Trap before moving ahead. Students, the entire story is about entrapment of human being for fame, for name, for gaining something, for achieving something. Therefore, the title is extremely appropriate. Let us talk about the writer Selma Lagerlöf before we move into the line-by-line explanation of the story. Selma Lagerlöf was a Swedish writer and teacher. She was born on 20th November 1858. She died on 16th March 1940. Right from the childhood, she was a bookworm. She started writing at that early age, but she did not publish at that moment. When she reached the age of 33, she published her first novel, and its name is Gösta Berling's Saga. In the year 1909, she received Nobel Prize in Literature as well. When she was just 10 years old, she completed reading the Bible, and this she had done to pray to God to cure her father's illness, and her father lived more 17 years because of her prayer. Selma Lagerlöf has contributed to entire world's literature because her work is translated into many languages, and here in our syllabus also it is included. Students, here we find the theme of the story, and this is a belief that the essential goodness in a human being can be awakened through understanding and love. Students, the first theme says that whoever it is, even if it is a criminal, we should be kind to them. We should try to see goodness in them. And through love and understanding, we can make him a normal human being from a criminal even. Let's move to the second theme, and it says that nobody is a born criminal. Because of circumstances, they become so. They are changed. They have taken wrong step because of some adversities in their life. The cure to all these problems are sympathizing with them, dealing with them with extreme care, showering love, etc. We can change any human being. Let me read out few more details from the image. This story is set amidst the mines of Sweden, rich in iron ore, which figure large in the history and legends of that country. The story is told somewhat in the manner of a fairy tale. Students, let's start the explanation line by line. Let me read out. Once upon a time, there was a man who went around selling small rat traps of wire. He made them himself at odd moments from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farms. But even so, the business was not especially profitable. So he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery to keep body and soul together. Even so, his clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger gleamed in his eyes. Students, when the story starts, we get to see a peddler, a tramp, a homeless man who sells rat. This rat trap he makes by himself, and the raw material like wire and other things he begs to people and sells it to different places. But even though he works hard, the job is not profitable. Therefore, he has to beg and he has to do little bit of thieving in order to survive in this world. But even after doing this, he was not at all able to get a full meal. Let's move ahead, students. No one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear to such a vagabond who plods along the road, left to his own meditations. But one day this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to him entertaining. He had naturally been thinking of his rat traps when suddenly he was struck by the idea that the whole students, here we get to see that the life of the peddler was so monotonous. Every day he used to repeat the same routine. But one day he pondered upon one idea that entire world is a rat trap. He compared the rat trap which he was carrying with the entire world. For the rat, there are cheese, pork, and other things to trap him. But for human being, there are riches, joys, shelter, food, name, fame, etc., by which human beings are trapped in this worldly rat trap. And of course, this thought was philosophical. And another important point is that the rat trap seller used to think that he is very much away, very much aloof from the world till now. But later on, what happens, we will get to see. So let's move ahead. The whole world about him, the whole world with its lands and seas, its cities and villages, was nothing but a big rat trap. It had never existed for any other purpose than to set baits for people. It offered riches and joys, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork, and as soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, it closed in on him. And then everything came to an end. Students, I have already told you that the peddler used to think that the world is also a rat trap. The things that we see, the things that attracts us are the baits for human beings. And he was so happy thinking that he is not a part of this world. But we will see whether he was or not. Let's move ahead. The world had, of course, never been very kind to him. So it gave him unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. It became a cherished pastime of his during many dreary ploddings to think of people he knew who had let themselves be caught in the dangerous snare, and of others who were still encircling around the bait. Students, the world had never treated the peddler kindly. Hence, he was full of bitterness and malice against it. So when he visualized the world to be a rat trap ready to ensnare anybody who would succumb to his temptation and touch the bait of riches and joys, he felt very amused. I hope it's clear till here, everyone. One dark evening, as he was trudging along the road, he caught sight of a little grey cottage by the roadside, and he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. Nor was he refused. Instead of the sour faces which ordinarily met him, the owner, who was an old man without wife or child, was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. Immediately he put the porridge on pot on the fire and gave him supper. Then he carved off such a big slice from his tobacco roll that it was enough both for the stranger's pipe and his own. Finally, he got out an old pack of cards and students, the peddler was shooed away from wherever he went. No one treated him kindly. This cold treatment frustrated him and kept him devoid of warmth and hospitality. When he approached the crofter's roadside cottage, he expected to be greeted by a sour face. The warm welcome he received surprised him. Students, The crofter who used to reside alongside the road was all alone. He did not have wife, he did not have child. Therefore, he became extremely happy to get someone to talk to. Therefore, he offered a very good hospitality very quickly. And he was so happy that he revealed all his secrets. And this was the time when the peddler had wonderful meal and warm sleep and a person to talk with in a friendly manner. Let's move ahead, students. Played majorlis with his guest until bedtime. Students, this particular word will be pronounced as majorlis. Okay? The old man was just as generous with his confidences as with his porridge and tobacco. The guest was informed at once that in his days of prosperity, his host had been a crofter at Ramsau Ironworks and had worked on the land. Now that he was no longer able to do day labor, it was his cow which supported him. Yes, that Bossy was extraordinary. She could give milk for the creamery every day, and last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. Students, here we get to see that the crofter was so much excited to get somebody to talk to, because maybe for so many years he was all alone. Therefore, when he got somebody, he wholeheartedly welcomed him. And he did not hesitate to show all his secrets, like 30 kroner, the money which he had earned by selling the milk of cow to the creamery. Earlier, he was a worker in Ramsau Ironwork, which was nearby. Let's move ahead. The stranger must have seemed incredulous, for the old man got up and went to the window, took down a leather pouch which hung on a nail in the very window frame, and picked out 3 wrinkled 10 kroner bills. These he held up before the eyes of his guest, nodding knowingly, and students, the crofter was excited about having earned 30 kroner in a month. He had no one to share this joy with him. Hence, he took the opportunity to show the amount to the peddler and give expression to his happiness. Moreover, he suspected that his guest did not seem to believe him. Therefore, he went near to the window and took out money from a pouch, showed it in front of the peddler. Now, what will be the after effect of this? Let us find out. The next day, both men got up in good season. The crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow, and the other man probably thought he should not stay in bed when the head of the house had gotten up. They left the cottage at the same time. The crofter locked the door and put the key in his pocket. The man with the rattrap said goodbye and thank you, and thereupon each went his own way. Students, the night was very awesome for both the men. They played, they ate, and they interacted with each other. Now, next morning, both of them woke up and they went to their respective work. But half an hour later, the rattrap peddler stood again before the door. He did not try to get in. However, he only went up to the window, smashed a pane, stuck his hand and got hold of the pouch with the 30 kroner. He took the money and thrust it into his own pocket. Then he hung the leather pouch very carefully back in its place and went away. Students, here we get to see that, driven by want, hunger, and starvation, the peddler had no principles in life. When he was shown the amount by the crofter, his mind started working on how to grab the money. He stole it at the first opportunity by breaking the window pane and showed no regard for the crofter's faith in him. Here we find peddler had become so selfish. the person who had given him a very nice hospitality, which he might not have received throughout his life, was deceived by this man. So, what happens further? Let us find out. As he walked along with the money in his pocket, he felt quite pleased with his smartness. He realized, of course, that at first he dared not continue on the public highway but must turn off the road into the woods. During the first hour, this caused him no difficulty. Later in the day, it became worse, for it was a big and confusing forest which he had gotten into. He tried to be sure to walk in a definite direction, but the paths twisted back and forth so strangely. He walked and walked without coming to the end of the wood, and finally he realized that he had only been walking around in the same part of the forest. All at once he recalled his thoughts about the world and the rat trap. Now his own turn had come. He had let himself be fooled by a bait and had been caught. The whole forest, with its trunks and branches, its thickets and fallen logs, closed it upon him like an impenetrable prison from which he could never escape. Students, the peddler used to think that he is away from the world. He is not attracted by anything. He can never be trapped by anything in this worldly rat trap. But it proved to be contrary, because here he was tempted by 30 kroner. He was tempted by money of the crofter, and eventually he himself was in trouble. Now he was trapped in this jungle. He was so hungry, he was so tired, and however he tried to come out of the jungle, it was not possible at all. So here, his statement of being smart proves faulty. Let's move ahead. It was late in winter. Darkness was already descending over the forest. This increased the danger and increased also his gloom and despair. Finally, he saw no way out, and he sank down on the ground, tired to death, thinking that his last moment had come. But just as he laid his head on the ground, he heard a sound, a hard, regular thumping. There was no doubt as to what that was. He raised himself. Those are the hammer strokes from an iron mill, he thought. There must be people nearby. He summoned all his strength, got up, and staggered in the direction of the sound. Students, we have already discussed what was the condition of the peddler. He was hungry, he was desperate, and he thought that even he had become entrapped in this world with the bait of this 30 kroner. Now he was thinking that his end has come, but he saw a ray of hope when he heard the sound of thumping of hammer. Now he collected entire strength and started moving towards the direction of the sound. Let's see what happens further. The Ramso ironworks, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with a smelter, rolling mill, and forge. In the summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal, which led to a large inland lake, and in the wintertime, the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. Students, in this paragraph, we get to see the description of the iron mill. It was very famous and it had everything which an ideal iron mill or forge shows. And it shows that how famous it was because its work intensity was so much that entire ambience of this iron mill was affected by the same. Let's see what happens further. During one of the long dark evenings, just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Students, here we see the picture of the iron mill, Ramso iron mill. Here, two people were there who were working in the furnace. The red hot pig iron was being stirred now and then, or it was being prepared by these people. Even though it was winter, the workers were not able to wear clothes because of the high temperature inside. But do you remember when Peddler was outside working, it was so cold and he suffered very much? So let us see what happens to him. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fireboy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. It was probably an account of all this sound that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close to the furnace. Students, here we get to see that because of lots of confusion outside and inside the furnace, nobody noticed the entering of the outsider. Students, whether the peddler is allowed inside the iron mill or not, whether he realizes that he committed something wrong or not, all these questions answer we will find in our next video. Students, if you have any questions, you can drop me a message in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Hello my dear students. Today we are going to continue with the chapter that we have started earlier, and that is Rattrap. Let us quickly recapitulate what we have learnt. We have learnt that there is a peddler who was a rattrap seller, and he had stolen 30 krona money from the crofter. The host who had given him shelter, food and everything that he required. For that day he was very comfortable, but he betrayed the very man and he started moving towards the forest in order to save himself from police and public. But there he understood that this was the wrong decision that he had taken. Now he was trapped by the bait of 30 krona rupees. But fortunately he heard some noise and he started moving towards the furnace. Students, now we will move further in the story. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close to the furnace. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. Students, vagabonds, tramps, they don't have their permanent home. Therefore, wherever they find shelter which is conducive for that very day, they stay out there. Here also the same thing has happened. Somehow vagabond got a place to reside. Therefore, he asked for the permission and stayed there. Let's move ahead, students. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. Students, vagabonds are like such. They don't have cleanliness, they wear the clothes that they have repeatedly. Okay, there is no place to clean their clothes because maybe they have the only one that they are wearing, and there is no means to clear their beard and all, therefore they look so shabby. And that was the look of this rat trap seller as well. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a hearty consent without honoring him with a single word. Students, when the tramp asked for the permission, then there was no problem in allowing. So master blacksmith, he allowed him, but did not honor him by replying through a word. Let's move ahead, students. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, the Ramso iron mill was owned by a very prominent iron master, whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible. And at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his 90 rounds of inspection. Students, the vagabond got the permission and he stayed there. Only thing he required was warmth, and that is what he got here. Apart from that, he did not long for respect or anything else, because he knew that he is not going to get any respect from anyone, because that is how the people used to treat him. The iron mill, that is Ramzo iron mill, was owned by a very prominent iron master who was very meticulous to his work. Now every day and night he used to come and do the inspection about the material that was being made and how the work is being carried out in the workshop. So he had come for the nightly rounds, and let us see what happens. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Students, here we find the workers were least bothered about the vagabond, but when the ironmaster came in the workshop, he went closer to this ragamuffin. Alright, but he wanted to take closer look of him, who had gone bit closer to the furnace to get him warm. "But of course it is you, Nils Olof," he said. "How you do look." The man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramzo, and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Students, here the ironmaster thought that the vagabond was his old acquaintance. He thought that he is Nils Olof. But Ragamuffin also did not try to disclose his own identity. It is because he thought that if he has mistaken him for his friend, then of course he will throw some money to him. He was waiting for money, but something else happened. "Yes, God knows, things have gone downhill with me," he said. Students, here the tramp, the peddler, says that yes, the situation has not been good in my life, therefore I am in this condition. See, only thing that was going in the mind of peddler was just to receive money from the ironmaster. "You should not have resigned from the regiment," said the ironmaster. "That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me." Students, here the ironmaster has mistaken this vagabond for his friend Nils Olof, and he says that he should come to his house because Ironmaster wanted to do something for his betterment. Let us see whether the vagabond agrees or not. To go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. Students, the vagabond was not happy when the ironmaster called him to his house. It is because he knew that he knew that he was not his friend. He was just waiting for some money, which did not happen. Next, he had stolen money from the crofter, so because of these two reasons, he did not want to go. Let's move ahead, students. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Students, when this story started, we saw Peddler was a beggar and he was in search of money. He used to sell rat traps in order to get money. He ran away for money. He wanted comfort for one day, therefore he stayed in crofter's house. Okay, but here everything is being provided by the ironmaster, but still he is not ready. It is because of two reasons. First, his identity is different. He is not Nils Olof. Okay, and another reason is he has stolen money of the crofter. Please don't think that I have such a fine house that you cannot show yourself there, he said. Elizabeth is dead. As you may already have heard, my boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. Students, one thing we must notice out here, and that is almost all the characters in the story are suffering from loneliness. Peddler is lonely, he does not have family. Crofter is alone, and the ironmaster and his daughter, both of them are alone as well. So loneliness is also another theme of the story. Here, ironmaster wants to persuade him to come to his house, but he did not agree. Let's see what happens further. But the stranger said no and no and no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain von Stahl preferred to stay with you tonight, Steinstrom, he said to the master blacksmith, and turned on his heel. Students, the word Steinstrom is the surname of a person, and here this is the surname of blacksmith. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. Students, it means that at last the ironmaster had said that he must give in, but he has not given in yet. His plans are ready, and let us see what he does now. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. Students, he had not given in. The ironmaster had sent his daughter to convince Vagabond to come in the manor's house. He believed that his daughter had great power of persuasion. Let's move ahead. She entered, followed by a valet, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master ironsmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and iron and coal still glowed in the furnace. This stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleep with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. Students, the ironmaster thought that the dress was so shabby of the vagabond, maybe that was stopping him to come to his house. Therefore, he had sent dress for vagabond through the daughter, and her persuasion will surely get the vagabond to the house. Thinking this, he had sent the daughter. But Vagabond became bit scared because he had done something wrong. Now and then he is so frightened. It is because of the thievery that he has done. My name is Edla Willingmanson, said the girl. My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight, and then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I am so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time. Students, Edla, the daughter of the ironmaster, tries to convince the peddler to go to her home. Let us see how she convinces him. She looked at him compassionately with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he has stolen something or else he has escaped from jail. She thought and added quickly, You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve. Students, Edla was much more observant than her father. She observed that the man must have stolen something. He might be a thief. That is why he is allowed to move and every arrival of the person. So, she also thinks that he might not be captain because he is so scared now and then. And captain, they have specific personality. They are brave, which brevity we don't see in the peddler. So maybe Edla also observed this, and then she came to a conclusion that he can never be a regimental comrade. Edla speaks so softly. She looks at him so compassionately, and she assures him that he is going to be as free as he is right now. This was the assurance which made Peddler think about the decision. She said this in such a friendly manner that the rattrap peddler must have felt confidence in her. It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss, he said. I will come at once. He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him with a deep bow, threw it over his rags, and followed the young lady out to the carriage, without granting the astonished blacksmith so much as a glance. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had evil forebodings. Why the devil did I take the fellow's money? He thought. Now I am sitting in the trap and will never get out of it. The peddler accepted the invitation of Edla, and what made him accept it, he does not know. Maybe because the lady was so soft and she was so compassionate towards him, and her words assured that he is going to be free after the Christmas Eve. And he was regretting, the peddler was regretting now that why he had stolen money. He knew that he is trapped now, that money is going to create trouble to him. He had forbiddings as well. The next day was Christmas Eve, and when the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones, he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table, and then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps. Students, the ironmaster was waiting for his regimental comrade, and he was making plan to better the life of his friend. He was ready with his plan that initially he is going to provide him with the basic necessities, and later on he will think about some kind of profession, some kind of job for him. And this he was doing just because he thought that this man was his friend. Remember, he is not doing a social service. He thinks that he is a known person, therefore he is showering his help. But Edla is all quiet because this girl is so keen observant, and she has observed that this man can never be a regimental comrade. Students, let's move further to see what happens when his true identity will be revealed. It is queer that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that, said the daughter. Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. You must have patience, my little girl, said the father. As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes. Students, the daughter could not see anything that was related to an educated man in the tramp. Therefore, she questions that he does not have any quality of such man. But father says that no, he was embarrassed last day because of his dress. So today he is going to be showing his true identity. Let's see what happens. Just as he said this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. However, he was dressed in a good-looking suit of clothes which belonged to the ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starch collar and wore shoes. But although his guest was now so well groomed, the ironmaster did not seem pleased. He looked at him with puckered brow, and it was easy to understand that when he had seen this strange fellow in the uncertain reflection from the furnace, he might have made a mistake, but that now, when he stood there in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. Students, here we get to see that ironmaster had mistaken him for his friend, but now it was broad daylight and it was clear that he was not so. Then ironmaster reacted so violently, he started scolding the peddler. Let us see what happens. What does this mean? He thundered. The stranger made no attempt to dissimulate. He saw at once that the splendor had come to an end. It is not my fault, sir, he said. I never pretended to be anything but a poor trader, and I pleaded and begged to be allowed to stay in the forge, but no harm has been done. At worst, I can put on my rags again and go away. Well, said the ironmaster, hesitating a little, it was not quite honest either. You must admit that, and I should not be surprised if the sheriff would like to have something to say in this matter. Students, here the ironmaster loses his temper. He becomes so violent and starts scolding the peddler. But readers must remember that it was his mistake. he had mistaken the peddler for his friend. Okay, so it was his mistake to send Edla and get him to the house. He persistently said that he is not ready to go, but it was Ironmaster's persistence that he was there in their home. Student, the peddler's reaction is so calm and composed. He says that it was not he who was pretending, it was Ironmaster who had thought that he is his friend. So still there is nothing which has gone wrong. Now also he can get back to his previous identity and go back. But Ironmaster had become so much angry that he says that no, I must call police in order to deal with this matter. The tramp took a step forward and struck the table with his fist. Now I am going to tell you, Mr. Ironmaster, how things are, he said. This whole world is nothing but a big rat trap. All the good things that are offered to you are nothing but cheese, rinds, and bits of pork set out to drag a poor fellow. Students, here the peddler becomes so irritated and he strikes the table and says that this entire world is a rat trap. Because when he had stolen 30 kroner, after that he was in trouble. That 30 kroner attracted him and he was in trouble. Now these wonderful things that was happening with him right now, he considers these as bait and now he is trapped. He wants to tell it to the Ironmaster, but let us see what was the reaction of this man. Set out to drag poor fellow into trouble, and if the sheriff comes now and locks me up for this, then you, Mr. Ironmaster, must remember that a day may come when you yourself may want to get a big piece of pork and then you will get caught in the trap. The Ironmaster began to laugh. That was not so badly said, my good fellow. Perhaps we should let the sheriff alone on Christmas Eve, but now get out of here as fast as you can. Students, the Ironmaster thinks that the rat trap seller had deceived the identity. He is a person who hid his real identity and fooled Ironmaster, and now he is preaching to him. So he did not like this and he says that he laughs at the preaching of the peddler. The Ironmaster had forgotten that for this person he was making plans to better his life. He wanted him to eat, sleep and do better in his life. Very quickly he had forgotten. So it shows that he was self-centered person. If somebody is related to him, then only he is going to help, not to the people who are poor. He is not ready for doing social service. But just as the man was opening the door, the daughter said, I think he ought to stay with us today. I don't want him to go. And with that, she went and closed the door. What in the world are you doing? Said the father. The daughter stood there quite embarrassed and hardly knew what to answer. That morning she had felt so happy when she thought how homelike and Christmassy she was going to make things for the poor hungry wretch. She could not get away from the idea all at once, and that was why she had interceded for the vagabond. Students, we know that Edla can convince anyone. She has power of persuasion. So here also she was able to make her father ready by telling that this is what they had promised to the peddler, that they will give a wonderful time on Christmas Eve, saying that she pleaded to keep this man at least for that very day. Let's move ahead, students. I'm thinking of this stranger here, said the young girl. He walks and walks the whole year long, and there is probably not a single place in the whole world, whole country, where he is welcome and can feel at home. Wherever he turns, he is chased away. Always he is afraid of being arrested and cross-examined. I should like to have him enjoy a day of peace with us here, just one in the whole year. Students, it was Edla who could understand the peddler properly. Peddler did not say anything to Edla, but still she was able to understand, she was able to empathize with this man because she was keen, observant, and more matured than her father. The ironmaster mumbled something in his beard. He could not bring himself to oppose her. It was all a mistake, of course, she continued. But anyway, I don't think we ought to chase away a human being whom we have asked to come here and to whom we have promised Christmas cheer. You do preach worse than a parson, said the ironmaster. I only hope you won't have to regret this. The young girl took the strange by the hand and led him up to the table. Now sit down and eat, she said, for she could see that her father had given in. The man with the rat traps said not a word. He only sat down and helped himself to the food. Students, here Edla was able to convince, I have already told, and with that, even the rat trap got the confidence and started eating the food that was laid in front of him. Time after time, he looked at the young girl who had interceded for him. Why had she done it? What could the crazy idea be? Students, the peddler was wondering why a stranger was doing so much for him. And we know the answer, that Edla was a humanitarian by heart. She did for a human being and not for friend or any relative. She was pained to see the condition of peddler, therefore she had helped, and there was no self-interest of Edla at all. After that, Christmas Eve at Ramzo passed just as it always had. The stranger did not cause any trouble because he did nothing but sleep. The whole forenoon he lay on the sofa in one of the guest rooms and slept at one stretch. At noon they woke him up so that he could have his share of the good Christmas fare. But after that he slept again. It seemed as though for many years he had not been able to sleep as quietly and safely as here at Ramzo. Students, it was true that the peddler had not taken a nice sound sleep for many years, and here he slept for two reasons. One, of course, he wanted to sleep, he wanted to rest, and another reason was that he was thinking over and over about the situation, that why a stranger helped him. In the evening, when the Christmas tree was lighted, they woke him up again, and he stood for a while in the drawing room, blinking as though the candle light hurt him. But after that he disappeared again. 2 hours later he was aroused once more. He had to go down into the dining room and eat the Christmas fish and porridge. Students, as it was promised by Edla, he was given the feast in this eve. As soon as they got up from the table, he went around to each one present and said thank you and good night. Students, here we find change in the peddler. Do you remember when he was in the workshop there? He did not wish a blacksmith when he was coming towards Menner's house. So here he is thanking each and every one and saying good night. It is a good sign which had occurred because of Edla. But when he came to the young girl, she gave him to understand that it was her father's intention that the suit which he wore was to be a Christmas present. He did not have to return it, and if he wanted to spend next Christmas Eve in a place where he could rest in peace and be sure that no evil would befall him, he would be welcomed back again. The man with the rat traps did not answer anything in this. He only stared at the young girl in boundless amazement. Students, when the party was over, Edla says that the suit is gift for him. And not only that, she said that if next year the peddler wants to come here, then nothing bad is going to happen. It means that Edla is not thinking that the peddler is culprit at any from any angle. It is because of the circumstances that he had become so. People hated him, people scolded him, people cursed him. That is why this hatred had filled the heart of the peddler. The peddler was so much amazed to see how matured this little girl was. The next morning, the ironmaster and his daughter got up in good season to go to the early Christmas service. Their guest was still asleep and they did not disturb him. When, at about 10 o'clock, they drove back from the church, the young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. At church, she had learnt that one of the old crofters of the iron works had been robbed by a man who went around selling rat traps. Students, here Edla becomes so sad because it was revealed that the peddler was a thief and he had robbed the crofter. Yes, that was a fine fellow you let into the house, said her father. I only wonder how many silver spoons are left in the cupboards by this time. The wagon had hardly stopped at the front steps when the ironmaster asked the valet whether the stranger was still there. He added that he had heard at church that the man was a thief. The valet answered that the fellow had gone and that he had not taken anything with him at all. On the contrary, he had left behind a little package which Miss Willingmanson was to be kind enough to accept as a Christmas present. The young girl opened the package, which was so badly done up that the content came into view at once. She gave a little cry of joy. She found a small rat trap, and in it lay 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes. But that was not all. In the rat trap lay also a letter written in large, jagged characters. Students, Edla was extremely happy to see the gift left by the peddler, as he had respected the faith shown in him by her. Rather than walking off with their silverware, his gesture proved that the goodness in his heart had been awakened and he behaved like a real dignified captain. Honored and noble Miss, since you have been so nice to me all day long, as if I was a captain, I want to be nice to you in return, as if I was a real captain, for I do not want you to be embarrassed at this Christmas season by a thief, but you can give back the money to the old man on the roadside who has the money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for poor wanderers. The rat trap is a Christmas present from a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to captain, because in that way he got power to clear himself. Written with friendship and high regard, Captain von Stahl. Students, the peddler had been living an unpleasant life of poverty, despair, and frustration. His only aim in life was to keep his body and soul together by hook or by crook. Even through beggary and theft, the society had an apathetic and an indifferent attitude towards him. Thus, he too, having a defiant attitude towards society, flouted its norms. He never came across any angelic soul to understand, sympathize, love, and guide him. Later, neither the crofter's hospitality nor the ironmaster's invitation to the manor house made any impact on him. In fact, he repaid the crofter by stealing his earnings and the ironmaster by giving him a piece of his mind when the latter talked to him, taking the matter to the sheriff. However, Edla's warmth, understanding, and genuineness touched him. Even the girl treated him like a captain. He spontaneously behaved like a real one. He left a rat trap as a Christmas gift for Edla and enclosed a letter of thanks and confessed in it, leaving behind the stolen money to be restored to the owner. He redeemed himself from his dishonest ways and emerged an altogether transformed person. And this all happened because of this noble soul of Edla. Students, this is the end of the story. Let me know if it is clear to you, and we will meet in the next video. Thank you so much.